Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive. We've got some really insightful material here today, basically excerpts from a marketing instructor manual. And our mission, as always, is to get you well-informed, fast, giving you that shortcut. Today, we're digging into the complex but really critical world of social responsibility and ethics in marketing. Lots of surprising facts and key insights here.
Absolutely. And, this isn't just theory. This stuff is everywhere in business today. Whether you're a consumer thinking about what to buy, or maybe you're working in a company, or even if you're just curious about how businesses tick. Understanding this is, well, it's vital. It really shapes so much from, what's on the shelves to the companies you might invest in
Yeah.
or work for.
Totally agree. So let's kick off with the big picture. What exactly is social responsibility in marketing?
Mm,
Well, at its heart, it's about a company's obligation to um, maximize its positive impact and minimize the negative stuff on society. Think about it, that covers the total effect of like every single marketing decision they make.
every single one.
Yeah. And central to this are stakeholders. Now, that word gets thrown around a lot,
Yeah.
but it means something specific here. They're the people or groups who have a real stake, a claim in what a company does, its products, its operations, markets, industry, outcomes. We're talking customers, obviously, but also employees, investors, shareholders, suppliers.
Governments, communities.
Exactly. They all have skin in the game.
That's right. And they play a massive role. I mean, the material we looked at is super clear on this. If you ignore what stakeholders demand, especially around responsible marketing, it can be disastrous. You could completely destroy a customer trust. Or you might find yourself facing new government regulations you don't want, and it can seriously hurt your financial standing. But the flip side is also really compelling. When companies act responsibly, it's not just, nice. It
Hmm.
actually generates good PR. It can boost sales directly. It builds goodwill. Plus, if you've got a culture that really values this stuff, it tends to mean more committed employees and better overall business performance.
That makes a lot of sense. It's almost like a virtuous cycle when done right.
Kind of, yeah. Though it's definitely not always easy to achieve.
Right. So the research we looked at breaks down social responsibility into four dimensions,
Mm.
often shown as a pyramid. At the bottom, the foundation, is economic responsibility. Now, this might sound, well, obvious. A company needs to make money, right?
Of course. Got to be profitable.
But the key insight here is that profit isn't just for shareholders, it's the bedrock. It enables everything else. Without that economic stability, all the other responsibilities are just talk.
Uh-huh.
You need that foundation to create jobs, offer products, and actually be responsible in other ways. It powers the whole thing.
Precisely. You can't do good if you go out of business. It's as simple as that.
Then, moving up the pyramid, we find legal responsibility. This is basically the expectation that marketers, well, they compete fairly and follow the rules, obey all the laws and regulations.
It's the baseline, really, playing by the rules society has set. Though it's worth pointing out, laws don't always keep up, with societal expectations or new tech. So just being legal doesn't automatically mean you're being fully responsible or ethical. Sometimes the bar needs to be higher.
That's a great point, and it leads perfectly to the next layer.
Yeah.
Ethical responsibility. This is about the principles and standards of acceptable conduct. And who decides that? Well, it's various stakeholders, the public, regulators, consumers, the industry, the company itself. And the critical thing here is that being ethical goes way beyond just what's legal. It's about building trust, which is absolutely fundamental for any long-term relationship. You can be legal but still act in ways people find really unethical.
Exactly. Trust is so fragile.
And then right at the top of this pyramid, we have philanthropic responsibilities. These are things that aren't required by law, but they promote human welfare or goodwill, things a company chooses to do. Our sources highlight two main types here. First, cause-related marketing. We've all seen this, right? Linking a product sale to a donation for a social cause. Buy this, and we'll give X amount to charity.
Yeah, pretty common.
But then there's something called strategic philanthropy. And this feels like the real power move. It's not just about writing checks. It's about using your company's unique strengths, its core skills and resources to tackle social problems, but in a way that also benefits the business. It's integrated, not just charity, but shared value creation.
That's the key difference. When you align what you're good at as a business with doing good for society,
Yeah.
that's where you get real sustainable impact. It's a win-win. Creates value for everyone involved.
Okay, so we've got this framework: economic, legal, ethical, philanthropic. Where do these ideas actually get tested in the real world? The research points to three big areas. First one, sustainability, defined as the potential for the long-term well-being of the natural environment. It covers everything from company strategies and practices to technologies, even lifestyles. We see companies trying to protect the environment, adopting greener practices, offering certified products, like from the Forest Stewardship Council, for example.
Right, and the environmental movement itself, according to these sources, is really pushing businesses towards some pretty ambitious goals. They talk about four main ones. First, trying to eliminate the whole concept of waste. Think circular economy. Second, reinventing the product itself, designing for sustainability right from the start. Third, making prices reflect the true environmental cost, which, let's be honest, probably means a lot of things would cost more.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
And fourth, ultimately making environmentalism profitable for businesses. Creating incentives. Take Unilever. They're working on making their palm oil production fully sustainable. That's a huge challenge. I mean, think about that supply chain. It's massive, global, complex. They've done things like build processing plants in Indonesia, use green palm certificates to try and verify sourcing. But even with all that, monitoring that whole chain, it's incredibly difficult. Needs constant and often expensive attention.
Constant vigilance. That seems to be a theme. And it definitely applies to our next big category, consumerism. This is all about efforts by individuals, groups, organizations, usually independent ones, trying to protect consumer rights. We see consumer groups doing things like lobbying politicians, organizing boycotts, running PSAs.
And social media now, obviously, a huge tool for them.
Absolutely. Social media has amplified their voice incredibly. A key moment for consumer rights was President Kennedy outlining 4 basic rights, still so relevant. First, the right to safety. Marketers shouldn't sell stuff that's harmful. The GM fuel tank issue is a stark example there.
Terrible case.
Then, the right to be informed. Consumers need access to relevant information to make good choices. No hiding key details. Third, the right to choose, meaning access to a variety of products, competitive prices, fair quality, and service. And finally, the right to be heard, making sure consumer interests actually get considered in government policy. A classic positive example is Starkist, remember? They switched to dolphin-safe tuna after huge consumer pressure.
Yeah, that was a big win for consumer power, and that right to be heard is just amplified massively now, like you said, with social media. Companies have to listen, or at least appear to listen, much more quickly.
Good point. Okay, our third major category here is community relations. This is about how businesses act as, members of the community they operate in. Corporate philanthropy businesses giving money to local projects, schools, health, arts, that kind of thing, is apparently on the rise. But it's more than just donations. Companies impact community quality of life through providing jobs, driving economic development.
Yeah, being a good employer, a stable presence.
Yeah, right. And through those direct financial contributions that help build local infrastructure or support local groups, it's about being a good neighbor, basically.
Not just extracting value, but adding it too.
Exactly. Okay, so that's social responsibility in broad strokes. Now, let's zoom in specifically on a marketing ethics. We said social responsibility is the big picture, the company's total impact. Ethics is more focused. It's the principles and standards defining acceptable conduct in marketing activities themselves. And when companies mess this up, when they deviate from accepted standards, well, things can fall apart fast. You get unhappy customers, trust evaporates, sometimes lawsuits follow, and apparently consumer distrust has been increasing lately because of some major ethical scandals.
Definitely feels that way.
So how does this ethics piece play out across the different parts of marketing, the marketing mix? Where do the ethical challenges really pop up?
Yeah, it's interesting how these dilemmas show up everywhere. The material highlights product-related issues right away, like failing to tell people about risks with a product, those GM fuel tanks again. Or just not giving enough info about how a product works or its real value or how to use it properly. Product recalls are obviously a big ethical flag, but sometimes it's subtler, like just letting quality slip over time. And then you have massive breaches like the Volkswagen emissions scandal. That wasn't just a mistake. That was deliberate deception.
Yeah.
Using software to cheat tests. Huge impact on the environment and obviously on trust.
Unbelievable. Okay, what about promotion? Promotion-related ethical issues. This seems like an area ripe for problems. False advertising, misleading promotions?
Absolutely. Like Mobil claiming their trash bags were biodegradable when, well, they weren't really under normal conditions. That's greenwashing.
Greenwashing. Yeah, we hear that term a lot. Making things sound eco-friendly when they aren't.
Exactly. And then there's just straight up bribery, of course, trying to influence decisions improperly. That's a clear ethical line.
Okay, then pricing-related ethical issues. Seems like there are lots of ways to be dodgy here. Things like price fixing between competitors, predatory pricing to drive someone out of business.
Failing to disclose the full price of something up front. Hidden fees, that kind of
Oh,
thing.
yes. Hate those. And price gouging, jacking up prices unfairly, often when people are vulnerable, like during an emergency.
Right. And bait and switch tactics, too.
Explain that one again.
That's where they lure you in with a really low price on something.
Okay.
But then when you get there, they try to push you onto a much more expensive product. Or they say the cheap one's out of stock. Or they pile on expensive add-ons you need. Nintendo was accused of something like this, wasn't it? Allegedly hiking prices and limiting game supply during Christmas to exploit demand.
Wow. Yeah, that feels like manipulating customers, not just setting a price. It breaks that trust element again. And finally, distribution-related ethical issues. This involves the channels, the middlemen, counterfeiting comes up here, fake goods. That's a huge global problem, right? It affects everything from handbags to medicines.
Huge and dangerous, especially with things like pharmaceuticals. Other issues here include maybe messing with product availability to exploit a situation, or using coercion to force intermediaries like retailers to do things they don't want to, and something called channel stuffing.
Channel stuffing, what's that?
It's basically shipping way more inventory to your wholesalers or retailers than they actually need or can sell, often done near the end of a quarter to inflate your own sales figures artificially. Makes the company look better to investors, but it's deceptive.
Got it. So deception across the board seems to be a common thread in unethical behavior.
It really is. And, going back to distribution and supply chains, marketers need constant vigilance there because companies are increasingly being held responsible for ethical conduct throughout their entire supply chain, not just inside their own walls. So companies often create supplier codes of conduct, which is good, but making sure those codes are actually followed. That often means expensive, regular audits. You need to know what's happening way downstream. To really foster ethical supply chains, the recommendations are pretty clear. Adopt a strong global supplier code. Make sure it's communicated effectively way down the line. Encourage your team's purchasing compliance to work together to find ethical suppliers that are still cost-effective. Diversify your supply base if you can, though that's sometimes hard if the best producers are all in one region. And crucially, do regular independent audits and actually take action if violations are found. Think back to Unilever and palm oil. It shows just how complex and ongoing this effort has to be. Building plants, using certificates. It's a constant strategic push.
It really sounds like a massive undertaking. So, given all these potential pitfalls, why do unethical decisions happen? What drives them? Our research points to a few key factors. First, they're individual factors. People make decisions based on their personal values, right? Learn from family, friends, religion, school. So, naturally, you get a mix of ethical viewpoints in any workplace. But here's something that jumped out at me. The research suggests the organization's values often have a bigger impact on marketing decisions than an individual's personal values.
Isn't that fascinating? The culture can kind of override personal beliefs?
Yeah, it suggests the environment plays a huge role.
Yeah.
Which leads to the next point. Organizational relationships. How people handle ethical dilemmas often depends on what they see and learn from others around them at work. The organizational culture, that shared set of values, beliefs, goals, norms, rituals. It tells people what's expected, how to act.
And who sets the tone for that culture?
Top management, especially the CEO, VP of marketing. Their actions, their priorities, they signal what's really valued. And coworkers matter too. If you see others acting unethically and getting away with it, or even being rewarded, well, you're more likely to do it yourself.
That makes sense. Peer pressure or just normalization of bad behavior.
Exactly. And it seems clear that organizational pressure is a major driver of ethical problems. Just look at Wells Fargo, those crazy high sales goals, managers looking the other way. It created an environment where opening fake accounts became almost like rational for employees trying to keep their jobs.
A total systemic failure, not just a few bad apples.
Right. Which brings us to the third factor, opportunity. This is about the conditions in the workplace. Do they limit the chances for unethical behavior, or do they maybe even provide rewards for it? If someone does something unethical and nothing bad happens, or they even get praise for the results, they're probably going to do it again.
And the research suggests something really striking about opportunity, doesn't it?
It does. What did you find particularly notable there?
Well, what's fascinating is that opportunity often turns out to be a better predictor of unethical behavior than even someone's personal values.
Wow.
Yeah. It suggests that the situation itself, the lack of oversight, the presence of temptation, the absence of consequences can lead even generally good people to make bad choices. This is where things like professional codes of conduct, clear company policies on ethics, they can make a real difference. They reduce the opportunity by making expectations clear and outlining what happens if you cross the line. Makes those unethical choices less attractive, less possible.
Okay, so individual factors, organizational culture, and pressure and opportunity. That's a complex mix. So how can companies actually improve marketing ethics, knowing all this? The research talks about needing to deal with both bad apples and bad barrels, meaning, yes, you need to try and screen out unethical individuals, the bad apples. But maybe more importantly, you have to fix the environment, the bad barrel that might be encouraging or allowing bad behavior.
Right. Sometimes it requires a fundamental redesign of the culture, changing what's rewarded, what's punished, what's expected.
And a practical tool for this is the Code of Conduct, or Code of Ethics. These are the company's formal rules and standards. They spell out what's expected of employees. How do they help, specifically? Well, they reduce that opportunity factor we talked about. They clarify expectations. They spell out consequences for violations.
And they need to be living documents, right? Not just filed away.
Exactly. Periodically revised to keep up with new challenges or fix weaknesses. And crucially, top management's role is absolutely central here. They have to champion the development and, more importantly, the enforcement of ethics and compliance programs.
Has to come from the top.
For sure. The research says effective programs usually include written standards, regular ethics training, and confidential ways for employees to report concerns, hotlines, things like that. And the biggest impact, it comes when you have both a strong ethical culture and a well-implemented practical ethics program. It's the combination.
Yeah, let's look at Wells Fargo again as an example of trying to fix things. What did they do? Replace board members, got a new CEO. That signals change at the top. Critically, they got rid of those sales goals that were driving the bad behavior. That removes the pressure. They brought in a new pay structure, focused more on customer service, realigning incentives, and going forward, things like having a chief ethics officer, doing meaningful ethics training, making sure those hotlines are truly confidential and effective. Those are the kinds of steps that can rebuild trust and improve the ethical climate. Managers leading by example becomes key.
It really does feel like it has to be embedded into the strategy of the company, which brings us to how this all fits into strategic planning. First, maybe we should quickly clarify the difference between ethics and social responsibility again. People often mix them up.
Good idea.
So ethics is about those individual and group decisions, right versus wrong in a specific situation. It's a part of social responsibility.
Right, a dimension of it.
Whereas social responsibility is the bigger picture, the total impact of all the company's marketing decisions on society. Ethics helps inform that broader responsibility.
Well put.
And strategically, companies constantly have to balance things. The cost of being socially responsible versus what society demands. And these demands can conflict, right? Like, society wants a cleaner environment.
But also wants cheap products.
Exactly. So marketers have to figure out, realistically, how much are people willing to pay for these responsible practices? They're often trade-offs.
It's a constant calculation.
But here's the really encouraging part, the payoff. The evidence increasingly shows that being ethical and socially responsible actually improves marketing performance.
Yes, that's a key takeaway. It's not just philanthropy. It often leads to increased profits. Taking that broader stakeholder view, thinking about employees, communities, the environment, not just shareholders, it leads to better marketing practices overall, which contributes to better financial performance, better social outcomes, and better ethical performance. And think about reputation. A good reputation among consumers. That can directly boost sales and build really strong brand loyalty.
So the argument that it's too expensive to be responsible might be short-sighted.
Increasingly, yes. If we connect this to the bigger picture, there's this growing realization that the long-term value you get from being a responsible business, it usually far outweighs the short-term costs. Look at New Belgium Brewing. Their success, their ability to charge premium prices for their beer, it's tied directly to how they treat their employees, their community involvement, their sustainability efforts.
It's a part of their brand identity.
Totally. Or think about Senko Designs. It's a social enterprise. People buy their products because they care about the story, about helping women in Uganda get an education. The cause is part of the appeal. It's not just about feeling good, it's genuinely smart business in today's world.
What a fascinating journey through this topic.
Okay.
Okay, to recap, we've unpacked the pyramid of social responsibility: economic, legal, ethical, philanthropic. We dove into the specific ethical traps across the marketing mix: product, promotion, price, distribution. We look at why bad decisions happen, individual factors, organizational pressures, opportunity, and importantly, how companies can actually improve through culture change, codes of conduct, and strong leadership.
It really covers a lot of ground. And it leads me to a final thought, maybe a question for you, our listener. Thinking about everything we've discussed, corporate responsibility, ethics in marketing, how do you personally weigh this stuff? When you're making purchasing decisions or maybe choosing where to work, how much does a company's ethics or social track record matter to you? And what responsibility do you feel you have as a consumer or employee to encourage better behavior? Consider tricky cases like Walmart's opening price point strategy. Great low prices for consumers, right? But it sparked huge debates about the impact on suppliers, wages, local economies. Is that ethical? It's complex. Or think about whistleblowers. What happens when someone inside a company speaks out about wrongdoing and faces retaliation? How do we weigh a company's internal ethics versus its external image or impact? There aren't always easy answers here.
Definitely not easy answers. Powerful questions to mull over. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the crucial world of social responsibility and ethics in marketing. We hope you feel more informed and maybe inspired to keep exploring these vital topics. Until next time.